Let's jump right in. Today, we're setting the stage for an absolutely incredible journey. We're merging deep, rigorous philosophy with a very personal cross-country motorcycle trip. We're going to explore how we relate to the world around us, to our machines, and ultimately to our own minds. If you've ever felt, kind of disconnected from the modern grind, or wondered how to find true meaning in the everyday stuff, well, this is exactly the roadmap you've been looking for. To really get the mindset of this journey, think about this. Traveling in a car is, well, it's pretty passive, right? You're in a compartment behind glass, just watching the world whiz by like it's just another TV show. But on a motorcycle, that frame is completely gone. You're out there. You are literally in contact with it all. The sense of presence is just overwhelming. And this isn't just about travel. It's a profound metaphor for how we actually choose to experience our own existence. And that metaphor brings us directly to our source material for today's explainer, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert M. Pirsig. This iconic book is our guide. It launches an inquiry into values that is, honestly, just as relevant today as it ever was. It challenges us to look really closely at what we take for granted, using the literal, greasy act of fixing a motorcycle to unpack the very nature of reality itself. But what makes this whole thing so compelling is that these huge, lofty, philosophical concepts, they're totally grounded in a human story. It's the story of a father and his 11-year-old son, Chris, taking a trip across the American Northwest. Out on the open road, they're looking for connection, not just with the landscape, but with each other. It starts as a vacation, sure, but as you'll see, it very quickly turns into a high-stakes journey of the mind. Okay, moving to Section 1, the problem with technology. Running from the machine. Let's start with the surface conflict that really kicks this whole philosophical inquiry into gear. Early on, the narrator notices this intense friction between himself and his riding buddies, John and Sylvia. They are desperately trying to escape technology. They absolutely despise motorcycle maintenance. Like, any talk of wrenches or valves just completely kills the mood. They see technology not as a useful tool, but as this blind, inhuman death force. They feel like strangers in a totally dehumanized landscape, acting as passive spectators to their own machines. Even the poorly written manuals they run into are written from that detached spectator's point of view, and honestly, it just breeds this deep, lasting frustration. This brings us to Section 2, Two Ways to See, the Great Divide. So the narrator eventually realizes this isn't just a petty disagreement about fixing bikes, not at all. He realizes that he and his friends are looking at the exact same motorcycle, the exact same world, but seeing it from two completely different dimensions. On one side, you have romantic understanding. That's John and Sylvia's vibe. It's all about aesthetics, the immediate surface experience, living in the now. On the other side is classical understanding, the narrator's approach. This is the square, structured world of underlying form, mechanics, systems, and data. To a romantic, a motorcycle is a beautiful, aesthetic experience. To a classicist, it's a complex system of mental concepts worked out in steel. The huge problem here is that these two ways of seeing are completely alienated from each other. Now for Section 3, the ghost of Phaedrus, descent into the mind. As the miles roll on, we pivot into a much darker backstory. The narrator isn't just traveling forward across the country. He's traveling backward into his own deeply troubled past, haunted by this unseen presence. Which brings us to a chilling question. Who exactly is Phaedrus? Throughout the text, the narrator keeps talking about this ghost who was driven to the absolute brink of insanity while relentlessly pushing the limits of rational thought. And here is the shocking twist. Phaedrus is actually the narrator's former self before he got amnesia. Years ago, Phaedrus's brilliant but totally obsessive quest for absolute truth ended with him in an institution. His personality was systematically erased by court-ordered electroshock therapy. So the narrator we've been listening to this whole time, he's a newly constructed personality, inhabiting the body of a man whose mind was utterly destroyed. Let's look at Section 4, the metaphysics of quality, bridging the divide. To understand why Phaedrus lost his mind, we have to look at the massive philosophical breakthrough he was trying to articulate. He was trying to heal that great divide we just talked about between classic and romantic, reason and feeling. And he found the answer in a single, undefined concept: quality. Now, quality isn't a static thing, and it's not just an adjective. It is an event. It's the exact instantaneous point where the subject, you, and the object, the world, actually meet. It happens before you even have time to intellectualize it. This beautifully unites the coldness of classical logic with the warmth of immediate romantic human experience. Quality is the parent of both. And this brilliantly shows the real-world application of his thought. The narrator insists that true quality bridges the gap between spiritual peace and greasy everyday technology. You literally don't have to flee to the woods to find serenity. If you are truly deeply engaged with what you're doing, even if you're just tightening a rusty bolt or reading a boring computer manual, you can find the Buddha right there in the gears. To really visualize this, think of human knowledge as a massive 120 boxcar train. Classic knowledge, that's the heavy, structured boxcars and the mechanics of the engine itself. Romantic knowledge is the dynamic, present-moment leading edge of that engine pushing forward. But here's the kicker. The train is totally useless without somewhere to go. Quality is the track the train constantly runs on. You absolutely need all three to move forward meaningfully. Moving into Section 5, Gumption and Inner Peace, Fixing the Machine. Let's bring this lofty philosophy straight back down to earth. How do we actually use this? How do we apply quality to a broken motorcycle, or, say, a broken situation in our own lives? It requires what the narrator calls gumption. I love this term. Gumption is the psychic gasoline that keeps the whole thing going. It's that pure enthusiasm, fueled by a direct, caring connection to quality. Without this psychic gasoline, you're going to give up at the very first stripped screw or life hurdle. Preserving your gumption is, hands down, the most important part of any maintenance. So what do you do when you hit a wall? The text gives us highly practical steps for beating a gumption trap known as value rigidity, which is basically when you're just too stubborn to see a new solution. First, accept your stuckness without any ego. Realize that being stuck is actually the predecessor to all real understanding. Second, deliberately slow your pace down. Third, quiet your mind, find some inner peace, and just observe the problem. Finally, if you're patient, a new fact will humbly present itself to you. It's about combining inner peace with mechanical focus to get real solutions. And that brings us to an incredibly profound realization. The real cycle you're working on is a cycle called yourself. The machine that seems to be out there and the person that seems to be in here, they aren't two separate things. When you tackle a task with care and quality, you aren't just fixing steel, you are fundamentally upgrading your own mind and character. External maintenance and internal growth are literally one and the same. Section 6. Healing the Divided Self, the Final Ascent. As the physical road trip nears its end, our story shifts to a deeply emotional climax. High up on a steep, foggy mountain trail, all that abstract philosophical tension finally boils over into a real-world confrontation between the narrator and his son Chris. Chris has been having severe stomach pains and emotional outbursts the whole trip. Up on the mountain, he hits a total breaking point. He's crying, overwhelmed by a terrifying sense of isolation, and he just sits down in the dirt, completely refusing to go any further. This breakdown is the tragic toll of his father's emotional distance. The narrator has been so terrified of his past, of the ghost of Phaedrus, that he's built a massive wall between himself and his own son. Then comes this heart-wrenching revelation. Chris asks why, back in the hospital, his father wouldn't open the glass door. The narrator is stunned. He's been having a recurring nightmare about this exact glass door, which symbolizes his past institutionalization and his current detachment. And he realizes, Chris shares this nightmare. Chris remembers the exact moment his father's original personality was locked away. In a beautiful, poignant moment of ultimate psychological synthesis, the narrator stops running. He stops fearing the ghost. To save his son from that same terrifying isolation, he fully embraces his Phaedrus persona. The fragmented pieces of his mind finally snap together. He is able to speak to Chris, not as an amnesiac stranger, but as the father Chris remembers from all those years ago. Our journey concludes with a bittersweet epilogue from the source material. We learn the heartbreaking fact that, years later, Chris is tragically killed. Yet the narrator shares that through the birth of his new daughter, Nell, the journey toward wholeness continues. As he puts it, the hole in the pattern is being mended. The pursuit of quality isn't some magic shield against tragedy, but it gives us the framework to keep living, mending, and finding real value in the present moment. Which leaves us with this final, vital question. Are you just a passive spectator in your life, watching it scroll by like a TV screen in a car window? Or are you finding the gumption to actively maintain your own cycle? The tools for peace of mind aren't hiding on some distant mountaintop. They're right in front of you, just waiting for you to care. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks a brand new way of looking at the everyday maintenance of your own life.